Our very special guest on Reaching Out is former Commissioner Ray Kelly. Commissioner, welcome to Reaching Out again.
Greg, good to be with you.
First, let me congratulate you on your recently published book, Vigilance. And also becoming the vice chair of the firm K2 Intelligence. Many New Yorkers feel that we're more concerned about safety today with the increased gun violence on our streets and vicious acts of terrorism in cities like San Bernardino and Paris just recently. For so long, we hear that New York has been the safest big city in America, and the crime statistics seem to say that. Well, what has changed?
I think you got to take a look at look at those numbers, because I think there is some issues with the numbers that are being put out. I think there's some redefinition going on as to what amounts to a shooting, that sort of thing. I mean, look, all administrations want to show that crime is down, but you have to take a hard look at those numbers. And I can tell you, people don't feel safer in this city. People say this to me all the time. And perception is reality in many instances. So the city feels unsafe in many people's minds, and unsafe in many neighborhoods in people's minds.
Now, it's interesting because when I say that the statistics are being categorized a certain way, because it's well known that I represent the school safety agents, and also I represent the members in NYCHA, 8,000 employees in NYCHA. In school safety, there's a committee that the mayor put together that wants to scale back on security in the schools, because they said crime is down, so therefore we could scale back on security. We could take the metal detectors out of some schools, and we could do all kinds of things, and we could recategorize crime, and we don't have to punish the children for vandalism or graffiti or other things that lead to other things. And I think a kid could burn down the school if they had their way and get away with it.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, they want the employees to work on the weekends by themselves. They want to work 6 o'clock in the morning and 8 o'clock at night when I think crime is up, and at that time there's no one else around. And they said, no, it's not dangerous. And yet there's a police officer that was killed in the housing development about 6 or 8 weeks ago. So police officer Holder. So, but when I say the crime is being recategorized, no one says anything, but I just heard you say it, so I know I'm not crazy, and I know I'm not wrong.
But any sort of cutting back on resources at schools, I think, is certainly unwise. People don't remember, but I certainly do, when the security of schools was under the Board of Education.
I was here.
It was a disaster. Local principals, local officials had a vested interest in saying that crime was not happening. They weren't reporting it. They weren't letting police into schools. That's why the School Safety Division was created in the police department, to have at least the potential of getting objective reporting. And, of course, I think the taking the security function out of the Board of Education, or now the Department of Education, and putting in the police department, was a smart move. I remember those bad old days in schools. I was a precinct commander, I was a supervisor responding to schools. It is much better now than it was, but taking out magnetometers, I think, is another unwise move. And, this is the biggest city in the country, of course. You have 1.1 million students in the system, and everything is bigger here. And if you had just 1% of those students have some sort of violent tendencies, whatever, that's 11,000 individuals. I mean, everything is large here. And I believe the school safety agents, certainly under my watch, did a terrific job. And we need them. We need them on the front lines. The system is too big. We need to create an environment where teachers can teach and children can learn. And that's what school safety officers are providing.
Now, when you mention 1%, and that's 1,100 children.
11,000.
You see, 11,000.
Yeah.
11,000.
Yeah.
See, people don't understand that there are 1.1 million children, and if 1% is bad, it's 11,000. And they don't understand that. But when they get the numbers of 1%, and somebody hears 1%, they say, well, that can't be too bad. But there was a firearm taken just Thursday when this aired, which would have been the third week in December. And that was highlighted in the paper. And that school had a metal detector in it. And a child ran out, and that child had gang ties. So when I mentioned housing, the same crime that happens in housing happens around the schools because the children live in housing. They go to schools. It's the same children, and they belong to gangs.
Yep.
And it's the same children committing crime. And I read the Daily News story about 40% of the crime and shootings are because of gang-related activity.
Right. And in housing, about 4% of in housing facilities, 4% of the population of the city live in public housing, but about 20% of the serious crime come from public housing. So it's a difficult environment to work in, certainly for your members.
Yes. So, I mean, the housing authority is trying to say that they're addressing the problem of crime. Yet I know my members have gotten stabbed, they've gotten shot, they've gotten shot at, they've witnessed murders, and they have to have these safety transfers, and they see unspeakable acts of crime every day, and it's being ignored by the city administration, and it's being ignored by the housing authority. And I don't know, other than getting a film crew going and doing my own expose, what I could do to make them pay attention.
Yeah. Well, I know it's a very demanding environment to work in. I don't see benefit in underreporting for the good of the community. There's always political reasons to perhaps when people do that, but as far as the community is concerned, as far as your workers are concerned, a full reporting of crime allows the police to deploy their resources and also gives the public a sense of what's going on in their own environment, their own neighborhood. So if in fact these things are not being sufficiently reported, that's a real loss for the people who live there.
So I understand what you're saying. If we report it, we can address it.
Yes,
because
exactly.
you know what's going on. If it's underreported and not reported, you can't address it because you don't know it exists.
Precisely.
This is Reaching Out. I'm Gregory Floyd, President Local 237. Our very special guest is former Commissioner Ray Kelly. And we're here speaking about crime and other subjects. Also, he is also the author of a new book, Vigilance. Please buy it. Our members make up the NYCHA workforce, and I did speak about that in public housing. The crime in and around housing is not being addressed. And what would you do differently?
Well, I'm not certain exactly what's going on. I'm not briefed each day. I have a lot of respect in Jim Secreto, who's the head of the Housing Bureau. He's a top-flight professional, and he knows what to do. I can't speak with specificity as to what is going on and what isn't going on, but that being public housing is the source of a lot of the crime in New York City. People who reside there, people who you visit there. So it needs a special focus.
You mentioned Jim Secreto because Jim Secreto was also the chief of school safety at one point. So he completely understands gangs and the children live in public housing, going to public schools. So, I mean, he's a great pick for that assignment. The question I would have is, would he be allowed to, and this is not for you, this is just my statement, under the current administration with fudging numbers and we got to make ourselves look good, would he be allowed to do his job? Because sometimes you can have the right people in right places, but if they're not allowed to do their jobs and they're being stifled politically, that is a hindrance. Now, tell us about your work now at the firm that you're with, K2 Intelligence. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's a great company. Yes. It's headed by really an icon in the security business, Jules Kroll, and his son, Jeremy Kroll. There's about 300 employees there, and they do some really exciting things, sort of cutting-edge operation. They do cyber investigation, cyber assessment, and cyber investigations. They do a lot of anti-money laundering work. They gather business intelligence, do business investigations. They monitor operation in a whole host of areas. So I'm very happy to be there. I was able to bring a team with me who came to my previous company, Cushman Wakefield. They were very, very good. The company was sold. We went to K2 with my team, and we're happy. We're doing a lot of exciting things.
Now, is that called K2 because there was a Kroll Security before?
That's right. Well, he owned Kroll Security,
okay,
and he sold the company and sold his name, so it's K2. It's the two Krolls.
Two Krolls. Oh, okay. Okay. So many New Yorkers, when asked, who do they admire? Who do you feel protected them? And so many say they trust Ray Kelly, and I feel the same way.
No, thank you, Greg. I appreciate that. I've had the honor of working for the people in New York City for, as you say, over 40 years, and I loved every minute of it.
And I have to say now, publicly thank you, because you saw the need to have our school safety agents become civil service, because you said you get a better agent, and it lessens patronage. And I got to say, I could say from 2007 to now, it's 2015, 8 years later, that was the right decision, because we do have a better school safety force because of that.
Yeah, I think it's a very impressive workforce. I think certainly moving to civil service was the right thing, the fair thing, the intelligent thing to do as far as providing security for the 1.1 million students in the New York City system.
Thank you. That's all the time we have for this segment of Reaching Out. Our very special guest was former Police Commissioner Ray Kelly, and he is the author of a new book, Vigilance. Thank you for coming on.
That's great. Good to be with you.